You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today I'm talking with the founders of title investigation service N-Title, Nicola Ashley and Nicola Davies, and we're talking a little bit about your service, about the development of the product that you guys have had on the market now for what, 3-4 years?
4 years now.
4 years.
4 years, wow. And we're also going to talk about that whole outsourcing opportunity that law firms have got, and just finding time to actually look at the business and say, what do I actually need? What do I really need? How can I flex? We're talking, it's April 2024. The market is incredibly fragile. What's going to happen over the course of the next couple of months with more interest rates and mortgage rates and a looming election as well. So plenty to get our teeth into. In the first instance, I wonder if you might tell me a little bit about yourself and a bit about the business, please, Nicola Ashley.
My name's Nicola Ashley. I'm a co-founder and director at N-Title. My role in the business in the last couple of years has been to really promote N-Title through marketing campaigns. We try to educate the conveyancing industry as to what we do.
My name is Nicola Davies and I am a co-founder and director of N-Title also. I think my role really has been more the sales function within the business, and it's all been about growth this year and trying to promote N-Title and just get it out there to as many conveyancers as we can.
And we've had you guys on the podcast before, not you two, but we've had a colleague of yours on, and we spoke about outsourcing and the role that outsourcing has in the legal sector these days. I think one of the things that you bring to the table is that you're both ex-conveyancers as well, so you have a certain amount of empathy with your audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were conveyancers for a long time before N-Title started, and we also worked together in a purely title investigation environment where we were able to see the benefits of removing the title investigation from the conveyancer, how it could speed up the transaction, how money could be saved, how capacities could be increased. They were the reasons behind N-Title.
Yeah, I think we had a real insight into the pain points for conveyancers as well, because we've been there firsthand. We recognise the constraints they have, the pressures that they're faced with. So, yeah, the forefront of everything we did back in the 4 years ago was really all about trying to help them and help the industry. And as Nick said, we really recognised that this is something that we could do, and and it worked. It's working.
Well, talk me through some of those challenges and what did you set up N-Title to try and resolve that you identified, in the roles that you were in?
I think we identified, because of our time in a purely title checking environment, that it could be removed. It actually wasn't going to hinder the process at all. In fact, it was going to aid it. It meant that it's going to speed up the process, because back in the day, I know it's not as paperless these days, but back in the day, your title investigations would pile up on your desk and you would be looking for an opportune 3 hours when you could sit down and you could give that new build title investigation the time that it required. And as things get busier and as the kind of demands from the client increased, that was just getting less and less possible. So ultimately, you'd be taking your titles home, you'd be working on the weekends, and it's not sustainable. It leads to burnout. It's just not the way that we should be working. And so we recognise that actually, if somebody removed from the transaction took that and had the peace and the quiet and to actually deal with the transaction and give it the expertise and the time it deserves, and then there's nothing to say that the transaction couldn't move on, better, more swiftly, and just take some of the pressure off. Really, I think that was ultimately what was at the forefront of what we wanted to do.
I think a lot of listeners will recognise that challenge of arriving at your desk, and we know that people are arriving at work 6-7 o'clock in the morning, not leaving till 6-7 o'clock in the evening, but between 9 and 5, for the sake of argument, they are answering emails, answering the phone, responding to estate agents' queries, that kind of thing, not actually doing the role of a conveyancer. Is that something you recognise?
Yeah, definitely. In the last 4 years, there's definitely been an increase in client expectations. Everything needs to be very instant. And that wasn't the case 10 years ago. It wasn't quite as instant as it is now. So there's definitely a demand for the conveyancer to act really promptly. They may plan to have an afternoon to do a complicated new build title investigation, but they don't actually ever get that time.
Yeah, I think it's definitely demand. I think, we talk to a lot of conveyancers during the course of our week, and they'll often be saying that they'll get an email first thing on a Monday morning, and then before they even get a chance to answer that email, they'll be getting a call from the client asking why they haven't answered the email yet. And it's an expectation, they sort of the kind of Amazon world where you expect to get everything dealt with straight away, and there's an immediacy in the need for a response. And I think it's tricky to navigate, and hopefully we can help by just, as I said, alleviating some of that pressure and giving them some time back, ultimately.
I want to come on to some of the practicalities of that and the operational side of Entitle, but I also want to pick up on something that you said there, Nick, about the expertise point, because I think most conveyancers would like to think that they can knock out a title investigation of a fairly straightforward freehold, in the town centre, something like that, terrace, pretty quickly. But more complicated titles, new build titles, leaseholds, they require more time. They require more expertise, and they require that time, as you say, Nick, to actually get your head into it and understand what you need to know.
Yeah, definitely. We've been thinking a lot recently about how we are losing a lot of experienced conveyancers from the industry. So for whatever reason, the demand, the stress, lots of different reasons, but experienced conveyancers are leaving, and they're not able then to pass on their knowledge to the more junior members of the industry. And it's a real concern. We know that it's really difficult to recruit and employ really good, experienced conveyancers, because that's what we do. And the firms that we're speaking to are also saying that there are knowledge gaps in conveyancing.
It takes a long time to build up that kind of knowledge. Like, as we talked about briefly before, Nick and I were in a purely title checking environment. We worked solidly just doing titles day in, day out. And even now, we'll come across something that we haven't seen before. And we're talking 20 plus years between us, just it's just so varied. And yes, you're right. The majority, I'd say most conveyancers, I'd hope all conveyancers could easily get through, a freehold simple title, but the majority of titles aren't like that. They throw you curveballs all the time, and you've got to and then unless you've got that knowledge, you don't really understand what you're missing. So it's a tricky one.
It's not only about being able to identify an issue as well, it's about having the experience to know the resolution and the consequence of that issue. And that's what
experience, doesn't it?
It can, a lot of experience. And it can, that we through our title investigations, we pass on that information to the conveyancer, so that we are trying to pass on our knowledge.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting point, actually. Some of the feedback we've had is with what we do is that because we give them a kind of explanation for the way that we work and the reasons that behind the report and the inquiries we raise, they can use that as a training tool, so that in-house, the less experienced staff can actually review the title, review what we've done, and review our explanation. And it's actually acting as a training tool for less experienced members of their team. So that's a really good thing, because I hope that long term then there's an educational function throughout the industry, and that it's helping to improve standards and drive up standards ultimately.
But when you think new build transactions make up about 7% of all purchase transactions, it's going to take years and years to have a really good experience, a new build title investigation, if it's only accounting for 7% of your workload.
I also think that it's one of those things, thinking back in the day when I was doing it, it takes so long to train. And if you're in a really busy environment, like when you have that time, you've got enough time to do it yourself, but to actually take somebody under your wing and train them, it's a time constraint as well. So I think that causes a few issues, because it's not just show them once one title. It's a long-term process, and to get somebody to be good at and capable of dealing with all types of complexities and different issues. So it's a long-term investment in that person, really. And I just think that conveyancers haven't got the time. They're just so busy.
At Entitle, we see the most weird and wonderful titles you've ever seen. No, we definitely get sent the most complex of titles.
We have like a Teams chat where everyone puts in them weird and wonderful, and we get a lot of amusement from that. And the kind of people that we all find it really very interesting, you know.
You've brought up the dreaded E word, enquiries, which is a bone of contention for conveyancers at the moment. What's your experience there in terms of the nature of the inquiries that you're raising? There's a huge amount of concern about the triviality of inquiries that are being raised.
I think that's where it's good that we're conveyancers, because we recognise the how annoying it can be when you get reams and reams of inquiries and actually they've been dealt with in the protocol documents. There's nothing more frustrating than that, and it does slow down the process, and it's unnecessary. So we've taken a very strong line. We don't need to raise necessary inquiries.
We're constantly reviewing our inquiries to make sure that they're relevant.
There is a line, there's a very, obviously we've got, over 100 clients registered with us, and there is a variation in what firms like. Certain firms like certain inquiries and certain don't, and so it's getting that happy balance between not raising unnecessary inquiries but covering all bases, really. So we've tried to, as Nick said, that's something that we're constantly striving to do and working to improve, and it's work in progress.
How then are you engaged by your clients, and typically how do they use you? Because I would guess, as an outsider looking in, a firm is unlikely to give you all of their title investigations simply because that's, in some respects, that's the role of their staff. Is it an overflow service? Is it ramping up and down? How does it best work with you guys?
So when we first started thinking of Entitle, we really believed that it would be an overflow service. We were able to see the ebb and flow of the conveyancing market and how you have really, really busy summers. It gets busy before Christmas. And we thought that they were the points at which we'd be able to assist conveyancers. Our over 100 firms use us in a variety of different ways. So some do actually send us all their purchase transactions. They've been able to incorporate Entitle into their processes within the firm. So as soon as the contract pack comes in, it's sent over to us. They know it's back within 48 hours, and that's how they work. Others do use us as overflow, so we may be there for holiday cover, sickness cover, just when they are particularly busy. Others will just send us the complex title. As we've discussed, they haven't got the expertise within their environment. They know that we have that. So there's not a set way in which firms use us.
No, I think that's probably just because of the nature of our kind of clients. We have so many different types. We've got your high street practices right up into your top 50 law firms that use us. So it really depends on where they sit as to how they use us. I think that's the beauty of our service, is that it's open to everyone. And as Nick sort of said at the beginning, we didn't really expect that. We thought it would be, more of an overflow system, but it has proved really successful. Like the first firm that ever used us, it continues to use us. Back 4 years ago, they were our first ever client. They continue to use us, and they've incorporated it into their business model. So they've just taken, they've actually put the onus on the client to decide whether to use us or not, and given that, and that's kind of worked really well. And so that's a way of using us. And then also we'll still get calls asking us to clear, massive backlogs. Things happen, covering staff sicknesses, things like that. That's still, a really big part of our business. But yeah, more and more people seem to be using us on a more regular basis, I would say. I think we've got quite a large bank of consistent clients will use us every month in whatever way they want to, whether it be for those leaseholds, those complex matters, things like that.
You talked about the way in which you deliver the reports back being used as a training tool for staff, which I really like the idea of. But where does that liability fall in terms of the outsourcing of the title, and what is the expectation on the firm to check your homework?
I would say that we would always say that we're an advisory service. We're like an extension of your team, and we're there to kind of like a helping hand through the process. So we would always tell our clients to read the report. In order to take that file, that property forward, I think it's important that they read and understand what we've done. But then we also recognise that we are specialists. We sell ourselves as specialists, and so we have indemnity insurance in place. We're accountable if there was something wrong with what we'd done.
We also have a really strict auditing process. This is something that has developed as we've grown. We have different levels of audit. So we have peer auditing, and we have supervisory auditing, and we have director auditing. So we're really confident with the quality of what we produce.
Yeah, it's probably worth saying at this point that we don't ask our clients to enter into any kind of contract with us. There's no minimum or maximum instruction level. So really the quality of what we produce has to be at the highest level. And we always kind of say that we're only as good as our last title check with that firm, because ultimately you do something wrong, they don't need to use us again. They're not tied in. We have put a lot of focus on the service we provide and the product and the accuracy of what we produce. And that's why, as Nick said, auditing is a big thing for us. We need to make sure the quality is high. There's a uniformity of what we produce, so that regardless of what member of our team carries out, that you're going to get the same level, the same quality and the same kind of report across the board. So that's something that Nick and I spend a lot of time ensuring.
One of the big challenges I suspect you find is that inertia to change an internal process. What do you say to firms who are sitting there saying to themselves, look, we've got a great process in place, we're capacity-wise, we're absolutely fine. We don't see that there's a place for this kind of service in our model.
Yeah, we always say well done, because if they haven't
amazing.
got a backlog of title checks, then they're doing pretty well. An end title service is a service that conveyancers don't always know that they need. So until we are able to tell them the benefits of using the service, and the benefits would be that you can reduce the transaction time, you can take on more work, so you can increase your profit, you reduce the stress of your staff. Until we're able to explain that, they're not able to see the benefits. The
kind of sales emails that I send out, I would say that a lot of the responses I get would be, we have a process in place, we have this covered. And I would say, as Nick said, that's great, but have you thought that maybe there's a more efficient way to work? Maybe there's a way that we can help you to take on more work, increase your profits, and that you can work more effectively and efficiently than you are now.
It's also, they're coping well now. I mean, it's April, it's not July, where they've got people on holiday, and maybe they've got 2 people on holiday and 1 person off sick, and they've also got loads of title investigations piling up. It's about planning ahead. It's about getting these processes in place so that you can be really effective all year round. And
with that in mind, and we were talking before we started recording about that traditional curve, if you like, that the property market goes through. Post-COVID, that seems to have gone out the window. It seems to be very difficult to predict where the market's going to go and when's going to be busy and when isn't. Is that something that you've found as well?
Yeah, it's
Absolutely. Impossible. We try this weekly. We try to kind of find some kind of trend, and there just isn't. And that we never, we've been 4 years, so kind of COVID times, and we've never had the traditional curve that you'd see in the market where it dropped. We've never had that. Even on a monthly basis now, it just changes so much. The fluctuation it's just not the predictability that it once was. Post-COVID, it's just a new norm, and it's not probably ever going to be like it was. Probably with a new expectancy from clients as well, and a new, immediacy and need to have things delivered so much more quickly. And there's probably an element of that. And then you've got the uncertainty of the market. So maybe things not completing, not getting that far in the transaction, things like that. It's a very fragile market at the moment, isn't it? Whatever firms can do to kind of give them that competitive edge and to help them to flex when they need to, I think, it's only a good thing.
Yeah, we were saying that if you were back in practice and looking at your own resources, and I appreciate your bias because you're running an outsourced service, but as you said, it takes a huge amount of time and investment to bring somebody into the organization, train them up on the internal processes and procedures, only to then reach a point in time, and we've got the general election later on in the year when we're pretty sure transactions will fall off a cliff, where capacity is going to be different from what it is now.
Yeah, I do think it's a really good tool for firms to have in their back pocket, that they can look to outsource things. I just think from a personal level, I had no idea when I worked in a law firm, the cost of recruitment, the cost of staff. It's just such a big part of your budget. And I just think if you can reduce that until things are a little bit more certain. It's not a time when I would want to be taking on lots and lots of new staff and training people up, because we just don't know. And as you said, the election, that's going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works, isn't it? For the, the rest of this year is going to be uncertain. It's all very positive at the moment, and long may it continue, that it continues but we all kind of predict things are going to slow down. So would I be looking to make big recruitment? Potentially not at the moment. And so if there's an opportunity for firms to be able to look to outsource certain tasks but not lose anything from doing so, then yes, they should certainly. I think that's a good thing. Other businesses do it all the time. It's just it's a normal process. So yeah, why not?
We're coming towards the end of the discussion, and I guess I'm just interested to kind of understand the journey that you've been on over the last 4 years, what lessons that you've learnt, and what the plans are sort of going forward. You mentioned that you've done a rebrand, which looks fantastic, and
Thank you.
also you're obviously looking to grow and develop the business as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we continue to educate conveyancers about the end title service, about the benefits of outsourcing in general. Conveyancers don't need to take it all on themselves. In the last 4 years, Nick and I have learned so much about business, about the needs of conveyancers.
So the focus for the next few years is all about growth. Nick and I took the decision at the end of last year to accept investment. So that's been a really positive step for us, and we're now going to be using that investment to grow our sales functionality, which goes hand in hand with that brand awareness, getting the messaging out there, that we exist, because although Nick and I spend every day shouting about it, lots of people don't know about us. So that's a fantastic opportunity for us. Along with that, we're going to be looking to expand our team, also going to be looking at technology and just trying to see if we can make some tweaks there to speed up our processes even more. The ideal situation, we think, is to be able to return our transactions within 24 hours. We do that for 86% of our titles at the moment, but we'd love to be able to make that 100% as standard. So that's something we're going to be pushing towards, and we need technology to do that. So that's something that's really on the roadmap for us within the next 12 months, really. It's an exciting time for our title at the moment, and we're really excited for what the next 12 months holds.
I suspect outsourcing is much more on the agenda of firms than it ever used to be. And it's been really interesting to kind of talk about your model, how it works, what firms may or may not sort of get from it, and also sort of just a more general kind of conversation about the plight of the conveyancer, which we've got a huge amount of empathy for, and we're trying to make it a better place to be. I'm not completely convinced that a lot of law grads are coming out of law school thinking to themselves, I really want to go and be a residential conveyancer. So we absolutely need to change that.
Yeah.
It's been really great to have you both on the podcast, and thanks very much indeed for coming on and sharing some of your insights.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you ever so much. It's been great to talk to you.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. My thanks to Nicola and to Nicola. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.